The dim-lit winery felt suffocating as I nursed my glass of Merlot, the rich aroma failing to calm my nerves. Mia's concerned gaze bore into me, her brow furrowed as she waited for me to break the tense silence. "It's Adrian," I finally confessed, my voice trembling. "He's been lying to me about everything." Mia's eyes widened, and she leaned closer, her voice hushed. "What do you mean? What happened?" I took a steadying breath, recounting the events from earlier that evening. I arrived a little early, hoping to surprise him before the tasting event started, but when I stepped into his office, I overheard a heated argument. The memory flooded back, Adrian's usually composed demeanor shattered as he hissed into the phone. "Kara, please, you have to understand." "Kara?" Mia's brow furrowed deeper. "Isn't that his wife's name?" I nodded, my throat tightening. That's when she walked in. This stunning woman, dripping in diamonds and designer labels. She took one look at me and sneered, "So, you're the latest conquest, hmm?" Tears stung my eyes as I recalled Kara's icy glare. Adrian tried to defuse the situation, but she wasn't having it. She turned to me and said, "Let me save you the trouble, dear. That man is a pathological liar, and you're just another pawn in his twisted game." Mia's mouth hung open, her hand gripping mine in a comforting squeeze. "Oh, Lena, I'm so sorry." I shook my head, anger and humiliation swirling within me. "That's not even the worst part." Kara then looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you think you know the real Adrian, you're sadly mistaken. But don't worry, you'll find out soon enough." Mia's grip tightened, her expression a mix of sympathy and fury. That's just cruel. What did Adrian say?" "He tried to brush it off, claiming Kara was just being dramatic as usual," I scoffed, the memory leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. But the way she looked at me, Mia, it was like she knew something I didn't, like she was daring me to uncover the truth. Mia's eyes narrowed, her protective instincts kicking in. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Lena. One way or another, we'll find out what kind of game Adrian is really playing." As I drained the last of my wine, a newfound determination washed over me. Kara's enigmatic warning echoed in my mind, fueling a desperate need to confront the man I thought I knew. Adrian's web of lies was unraveling, and I intended to untangle every last thread, no matter how painful the truth might be. Adrian's mansion loomed before me, its grand facade mocking the turmoil that churned within. As I stepped through the ornate double doors, the overwhelming scent of wealth assaulted my senses, a sickening blend of expensive leather and Adrian's signature cologne. He greeted me with a forced smile, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. "Lena, my dear, I'm so glad you came." I held up a hand, cutting off his rehearsed pleasantries. "Cut the act, Adrian. We need to talk." His bravado faltered, and he ushered me into the study, closing the door behind us with a heavy thud. "I assume this is about Kara's little outburst," he began, his tone dripping with disdain. "You know how dramatic she can be." "Dramatic?" I scoffed, anger flaring within me. "She accused you of lying to me, Adrian, of using me as some kind of pawn in your twisted games." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Lena, you have to understand. My marriage to Kara, it's complicated. We've been struggling for years, and her family's wealth is the only thing keeping this winery afloat." My jaw clenched as the pieces began to fall into place. "So, what? You've been using her money to fund your lavish lifestyle, all while carrying on affairs behind her back?" Adrian's eyes hardened, his mask of charm slipping. "It's not that simple. Kara knew about my indiscretions from the start, but she didn't care, as long as I played the part of the doting husband in public. It's all a facade, Lena. A game we've both been playing." I recoiled, disgust churning in my stomach. "And what about me, Adrian? Was I just another prop in your twisted little charade?" He reached for my hand, his touch sending a shiver of revulsion down my spine. "Of course not, my love. What we have is real. Everything I've done, it's all been for us, for our future together." I yanked my hand away, his words like venom seeping into my veins. "Our future?" I spat, shaking my head in disbelief. "How can you talk about our future when you've built your entire life on lies?" Adrian's jaw tightened, his eyes hardening with determination. "Because I love you, Lena, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make our dreams a reality." As he spoke those words, a chill ran down my spine. The man before me was a stranger, his charming facade crumbling to reveal a twisted, manipulative soul. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how deep my feelings ran, I could never trust a word that fell from his deceitful lips. The harsh buzz of my phone jolted me from my restless slumber. Groggily, I fumbled for the device, squinting at the caller ID. It was Mia. "Hello?" My voice was thick with exhaustion. "Lena, thank God you picked up," Mia blurted, her tone laced with urgency. "We need to talk, in person." An icy tendril of dread snaked through me. "What's going on?" "It's about Adrian," she said, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. "I've uncovered some unsettling information." Within the hour, I found myself at Mia's doorstep, anxiety gnawing at my insides. She ushered me inside, her expression grave. "Spill it," I demanded, bracing myself for the worst. Mia took a deep breath. "Remember Samantha Wilkins from college? The one who transferred after our sophomore year?" I nodded, my brow furrowing in confusion. "Well, I ran into her at the grocery store yesterday," Mia continued, "and she mentioned something disturbing." My heart pounded in my ears as I waited for her to continue. "Apparently, she and Adrian had a fling a few years back," Mia revealed, her words like a punch to the gut. "And according to Samantha, he was stringing along multiple women at the same time, feeding them all the same lies about leaving his wife." I felt the room spin, nausea churning in my stomach. "No, it can't be." Mia's expression hardened. "That's not all. Samantha said that once Kara caught wind of Adrian's affairs, she went into full-on revenge mode. She's been gathering evidence, documenting every sordid detail, all to strip him of everything in their inevitable divorce." My head was reeling, Adrian's betrayal cutting deeper with each revelation. "But why go to such extremes?" Mia's gaze softened. "Kara's family is obscenely wealthy, Lena. If she plays her cards right, she could not only take the winery but destroy Adrian's reputation in the process." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "So while he's been playing us all for fools, his wife has been playing the long game." Mia reached out, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'm so sorry, Lena. I know how much you cared for him." Tears stung my eyes as the weight of Adrian's deceit crashed over me. The man I thought I knew, the future I had envisioned, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed mirage designed to feed his insatiable ego and greed. But as the shock gave way to simmering rage, a newfound determination took root. Kara's methodical plotting had opened my eyes, and I silently vowed that Adrian would face the consequences of his actions. No matter what it took, I would ensure that he reaped the bitter harvest he had sown. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the cozy cafe, but its usual comforting scent did little to soothe my frayed nerves. I clutched my mug, the warmth seeping into my palms as I replayed Mia's words in my mind, desperate to make sense of Adrian's ever-deepening web of lies. A familiar voice sliced through the ambient chatter, causing me to stiffen in my seat. It was Kara, her perfectly coiffed appearance a stark contrast to the icy venom dripping from her words. "That snake has another thing coming, if he thinks I'll let him slither away unscathed," she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the tabletop. Across from her sat a well-dressed man, his sharp features and calculating gaze marking him as a force to be reckoned with, no doubt Kara's attorney. "Rest assured, Mrs. Bellamy," he replied, his tone clipped and professional. "My team has compiled an ironclad case against your husband. Once we expose his sordid affairs and financial misdeeds, the courts will have no choice but to strip him of everything." Kara's crimson-painted lips curved into a vindictive smile. "Good. That two-timing snake deserves to lose it all, his precious winery, his inflated ego, every last cent." My heart pounded in my chest as realization washed over me. This wasn't just a bitter divorce. It was a meticulously orchestrated takedown, and Adrian was the unfortunate target in Kara's crosshairs. "And those whores he's been cavorting with?" Kara sneered, her eyes glinting with malice. "They'll get their just desserts, too. I want their dirty little secrets dragged out into the open for everyone to see." My blood ran cold, the implications of her words sinking in like a lead weight. She wasn't just after Adrian. She was coming for all of us, his unsuspecting conquests caught in the crossfire of her vengeful crusade. The lawyer nodded, his expression betraying no emotion. "Consider it done, Mrs. Bellamy. Your husband's indiscretions will be laid bare for the world to witness." As they rose to leave, Kara's gaze momentarily locked with mine, her eyes narrowing in recognition. A cruel smirk played at the corners of her mouth, a silent taunt that sent a chill down my spine. In that fleeting moment, I understood the depth of her fury, the meticulously plotted retribution that would leave no stone unturned, no secret unexposed. And as the gravity of my own role in Adrian's downfall dawned on me, a single sobering thought took root. I was well and truly caught in the crosshairs of a war I never saw coming. The winery's grand hall buzzed with excitement as guests mingled, sipping flutes of our latest vintage. But beneath the laughter and polished veneers, a storm was brewing, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of Adrian's carefully constructed facade. I spotted him across the room, his charming smile firmly in place as he worked the crowd like a seasoned performer. My heart clenched with a potent mix of anger and remorse, the weight of his betrayal threatening to suffocate me. Before I could second-guess myself, I strode toward him, weaving through the clusters of well-heeled socialites until I stood mere feet away. "Adrian," I called out, my voice ringing with steely resolve. He turned, his easy grin faltering as our eyes met. "Lena, darling, what a pleasure to—" "Cut the act," I snapped, my words slicing through his rehearsed pleasantries. "We need to talk, in private." His brow furrowed, but he nodded, leading me through a side door and into the shadowed confines of the empty barrel room. The heavy thud of the door closing behind us seemed to echo off the weathered oak, underscoring the weight of the confrontation to come. Adrian's mask slipped, his expression hardening. "What's this about, Lena? You're causing quite a scene." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "A scene? Please, Adrian, we both know this entire charade is one big performance." I stepped closer, my words laced with venom. "I know everything. The lies, the affairs, Kara's meticulous plan to strip you of everything you've built on deceit." His eyes widened, panic flickering across his features before he regained his composure. "Lena, whatever Kara has told you." "It's not just Kara," I cut him off, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "I've heard it from others too, people you've used and discarded like pawns in your twisted games." Adrian's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "I see. So, you've chosen to align yourself with my vengeful wife, is that it?" I matched his steely glare, undeterred. "I've chosen to stand against your lies, Adrian, against the web of manipulation you've spun, ensnaring anyone foolish enough to fall for your charms." His lips curved into a contemptuous sneer. "And what, pray tell, do you hope to gain from this misguided crusade? A pat on the back from Kara? A fleeting sense of vindication before she casts you aside like the rest of us?" I stepped closer, my voice lowering to a fierce whisper. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions, Adrian. I want you to reap what you've sown, the pain, the humiliation, the utter destruction of everything you've built on deceit." For a moment, Adrian's mask slipped, his eyes flickering with genuine fear. But just as quickly, his bravado returned, a cruel smirk twisting his features. "Very well, my dear," he purred, his voice laced with menace. "If it's a war you want, you'll have it. But mark my words, when the dust settles, you'll deeply regret throwing in your lot with Kara." As he turned on his heel and stormed out, I couldn't help but shiver at the ominous promise lingering in his wake. But any trepidation was overshadowed by a fierce determination, a resolve to see this bitter feud through to its inevitable, catastrophic end. Come what may, Adrian would face the consequences he so richly deserved. And I would be there, standing resolute to witness his downfall. The stale air of the courtroom hung heavy, charged with tension as I took my place on the witness stand. Across the aisle, Adrian sat rigidly, his once charming veneer cracked and fading under the harsh reality of his impending reckoning. Kara's attorney, Mr. Morris, approached me, his gaze steely and calculating. "Ms. Rivers, please state your relationship to the defendant." I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. "Adrian Bellamy and I were involved in an intimate relationship for nearly a year." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, but Morris silenced it with a sharp look. "And during this time, were you aware of Mr. Bellamy's marital status?" My jaw tightened. "No, Adrian deliberately misled me, claiming he was separated from his wife." Morris nodded, his expression grave. "I see. And when did you become aware of the true nature of his deception?" The memories flooded back, the confrontation at the winery, the sickening revelations about Adrian's multiple affairs. "It was brought to my attention by Mrs. Bellamy herself," as well as other sources, that Adrian had been engaging in numerous extramarital affairs while portraying a very different public image. "Objection, Your Honor," Adrian's lawyer barked, jumping to his feet. "Hearsay and speculation." The judge fixed me with a stern look. "Ms. Rivers, please confine your testimony to first-hand knowledge and facts." I took a steadying breath. "Very well. What I can attest to is Adrian's pattern of dishonest behavior and blatant disregard for the truth. He lied to me repeatedly about the nature of his marriage, his financial situation, and his intentions for our future together." Morris nodded, his expression grim. "Thank you, Miss Rivers. No further questions for now." He turned to face the judge. "Your Honor, we would like to submit into evidence a series of documented communications between the defendant and various other women, demonstrating a clear pattern of infidelity and emotional manipulation." As the damning evidence was presented, I risked a glance at Adrian. His usual bravado had crumbled, his shoulders slumped in defeat as the weight of his transgressions bore down upon him. Morris continued his relentless assault, painting a vivid picture of Adrian's web of lies and the calculated efforts to conceal his indiscretions from his wife. With each revelation, each incriminating piece of evidence, the noose around Adrian's neck tightened. Finally, Morris turned to me once more. "Miss Rivers, in your opinion, based on your first-hand experience, what motivated the defendant's actions?" I took a deep breath, meeting Adrian's hollow gaze head-on. "Greed and ego," I stated firmly. "Adrian Bellamy is a man consumed by his own desires, willing to crush anyone and anything in his path to maintain his lavish lifestyle and inflated sense of self-worth." A deafening silence fell over the courtroom as my words hung in the air, their weight undeniable. In that moment, I saw the last remnants of Adrian's arrogant facade shatter, laying bare the ugly truth that had been festering beneath the surface all along. As I stepped down from the stand, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. The wheels of justice were in motion, and Adrian's carefully constructed house of cards was crumbling around him. After so many lies, so much pain and heartache, he would finally face the consequences of his actions. The cavernous interior of Adrian's once opulent home echoed with a deafening silence, its grand furnishings and lavish decor now mere relics of a life built on deceit. As I stepped into the dimly lit foyer, the weight of his downfall seemed palpable, a tangible presence hanging in the stale air. "Lena?" Kara's voice sliced through the stillness, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she emerged from the shadows. "I'm glad you could make it." I nodded, my gaze drifting to the packed boxes lining the walls. "So, it's really happening. He's losing everything." A ghost of a smile played across Kara's perfectly painted lips. "Oh, it's far more than that, my dear. Adrian's reckoning has been a long time coming." She beckoned me to follow, leading me into the study, where Adrian had once spun his tangled web of lies. The remnants of his former life were scattered about, half-empty bottles of scotch, framed photos lying face down, a forgotten cigar smoldering in an ashtray. "Do you know why I fought so hard to strip him of all this?" Kara mused, her fingers trailing along the edge of the ornately carved desk. "It wasn't just about the money or the winery. It was about unveiling the truth, about tearing down the facade he so carefully constructed." I tensed, sensing an undercurrent of something darker lurking beneath her words. "What do you mean?" Kara's gaze found mine, her eyes glinting with a chilling intensity. "I knew about his affairs from the beginning, Lena. Every sordid tryst, every empty promise whispered in the throes of passion. I catalogued it all, biding my time until the perfect moment to strike." A shiver ran down my spine as the full extent of her meticulously plotted revenge dawned on me. "You used me, us, all of his mistresses, just pawns in your game." Her delicate shoulders rose in an elegant shrug. "A necessary sacrifice, I'm afraid. You see, Adrian's greatest downfall wasn't his insatiable appetite for infidelity. It was his arrogance, his unwavering belief that he could continue to spin his lies indefinitely without consequence." I recoiled, sickened by the calculated cruelty behind her actions. "So, what? You decided to teach him a lesson by destroying not just his life, but the lives of anyone caught in the crossfire?" Kara's gaze hardened, her voice taking on a razor-sharp edge. "Some lessons, dear Lena, can only be learned through the harshest of methods. Adrian needed to lose everything, his wealth, his status, his fragile sense of superiority, and if collateral damage was unavoidable in that pursuit, then so be it. As her words hung in the air, I found myself questioning the lines between justice and retribution, vengeance and vindication. Kara's actions, however calculated, had left a trail of devastation in their wake. Lives upended, reputations shattered, all in service of her single-minded quest for revenge. And in that moment, as I stood amidst the ruins of Adrian's former life, I couldn't help but wonder, had we, his unwitting pawns, simply traded one devil for another? The crisp autumn breeze carried the faint scent of change as I settled onto the worn leather couch, my therapist's gentle gaze fixed upon me with a patient understanding. It had been months since the explosive downfall of Adrian Bellamy, and yet the reverberations of that tumultuous chapter still echoed within me. "How are you feeling today, Lena?" Dr. Wilkins prompted, her voice a soothing balm against the memories that threatened to resurface. I took a steadying breath, gathering my thoughts. Better, I think. It's been a process, coming to terms with everything that happened. Her brow furrowed with concern. The sense of betrayal must have been overwhelming, not just from Adrian, but from Kara as well, using you and the others as pawns in her revenge. A rueful smile tugged at my lips. That's an understatement. For a while, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies and manipulation, unable to trust my own judgment. Dr. Wilkins nodded, her expression one of quiet empathy. Yet here you are, emerging from that storm stronger and wiser. What has helped you find solid ground again? The answer came easily, a newfound sense of purpose burning brightly within me. Helping others who have been through similar situations, lending an understanding ear, offering guidance and resources, it's been cathartic in a way. A proud smile graced the therapist's features. That's wonderful, Lena. Turning your pain into a catalyst for positive change is an incredibly brave and selfless act. As our session drew to a close, I stepped out into the crisp air, inhaling deeply. The weight that had once threatened to crush me had lightened, replaced by a steely resolve and a profound sense of growth. Later that evening, as I sipped a glass of rich Cabernet, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mia, her voice tinged with a mix of sympathy and triumph. "Lena, did you hear? Adrian's been spotted, living out of a run-down motel on the outskirts of town." A pang of something indescribable tugged at my heart, a strange amalgam of pity and vindication. The man who had once commanded such wealth and prestige had been reduced to a shadow of his former self, his grand ambitions crumbling beneath the weight of his own misdeeds. "I did hear, yeah," I replied, my voice steady. "It's a lot to take in, seeing how far he's fallen." Mia's tone softened. "Are you going to be okay? I know this whole ordeal has been incredibly difficult for you." A soft, resolute smile curved my lips as I gazed out at the setting sun, its warm hues painting the sky in vibrant shades of redemption. "I'm going to be just fine, Mia. In fact, I've never felt more ready to embrace the future, one free from Adrian's twisted lies and the toxic cycles of deceit." As I uttered those words, a profound sense of peace washed over me, a quiet affirmation that the darkest chapters of our lives possess the power to reshape us, to forge us into beacons of strength and resilience. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. I would never again surrender my truth to the whims of those who sought to diminish it. Adrian's reign of deception had met its demise, and in its ashes, a fiercer, wiser version of myself was rising, ready to face the world on my own terms.